I tell them if we move forward with this new AI feature that is super ambiguous and doesn't seem to actually have a place, like square peg, round hole, we're just trying to be AI first or focused or whatever the buzzword is because CEO needs us to be or wants us to be. I say, what are we actually doing here? And there are a lot of different ways that you can do that. So whenever I've been in that more like in-house or people are like, we don't want to slow down, I always say like, okay, what's the smallest thing that we can do to move forward in this given moment that we can actually try and test? If you're going to go ahead with our new AI pen that writes for you, which actually like might be like an actual use for AI.
Hey, it's Ben. Welcome to Awkward Silences. Today's episode features my good friend and co-conspirator, Nikki Anderson. Nikki does, well, just about everything. She is a consultant. As you'll hear, she is recently taken up facilitating for companies, helping them have more efficient, productive, and, dare I say, enjoyable meetings. She runs a long-time coaching business. She has a practice wherein she helps folks jumpstart or mature their career, and just a friend of mine for a long time. So I think you'll hear the ease with which we converse, but there's a lot of golden nuggets of insight. Nikki talks about how she is and is not using artificial intelligence. She shares a bit of what she's hearing from the clients with whom she engages. The TLDR is budgets are tight, and so research is sort of getting a bit shifty in terms of where it's showing up. And she shares a bunch of tactical and practical ways that you can continue to balance rigor in your craft and practice with also being kind of at that table in those rooms. So here's Nikki Anderson, good friend and an overall smart person. Enjoy. Hey, Nikki, welcome to Awkward Silences.
Mm-hmm. Hi, thank you so much, Ben. I'm super excited to be here.
It's like, not quite family reunion, but it's like just two buddies buddying it up. For those who don't know, Nikki and I go way back. I will drop some links of our previous work. All sorts of fun, tactical and practical, or I think they're fun. They were fun to record. But today we're checking in on all the things. Nikki gives us a great point of view because she both does consulting, she does coaching, she does in-house work, she does it all. So we are going to check in on a bunch of things related to research and user experience and design thinking so that you can, as we get into, we're middle of Q1, if you're feeling a little unmoored already with all the news that has already happened this year, I'm confident that Nikki will get you back on track. So tell me about drop-in research.
So I guess a little bit behind the scenes of where I go in and I help teams in terms of either conducting research for them. I also have started facilitating. So facilitating working sessions, workshops, doing more trainings, all of that fun stuff. I also set up, research practices across organizations as well. So I just try and kind of understand what people are struggling with and try and solve it in the best way that I can. So meta researcher there.
Yes. And are there any, now I know you talk to a bunch of different kinds of companies and teams. Are there any trends? I mean, we'll come back to AI. Let's assume that they're probably asking you about some artificial intelligence adjacent thing. But absent that, are there problems that they're trying to tackle? Are there opportunities that are on the horizon? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so with things that have been going on, teams are a little bit leaner now. So there's a lot more expectation, I feel like, for the researcher to maybe wear a few more hats than they used to wear, such as doing a little bit more facilitation and activation. So that might look like an ideation workshop or a brainstorming session or a question gathering workshop. So things that maybe we didn't have to do as much before, that we have to do a little bit more now. As well as mixed methods and data triangulation has, I don't want to say resurfaced, but it's definitely a huge trend as, different companies have different resources and budgets so that no, we can't speak to 15 users, but where else can we pull data from that already exists? Or what's a lower cost way or faster way to pull data? So I would say that mixed methods, like a user researcher as a mixed methods, is really important. And ever present, we can get back to it later, is like, how do I set up AI and actually use it efficiently?
Hmm.
That would be another thing that I'm really seeing. And then just kind of like trying to understand what's happening.
Hmm.
Where are we going as user researchers? What do we, and I think that instead we tend to be kind of reactive in our nature, right? So we're waiting for people to request research from us, or we're waiting for people to like ask us a question. But we kind of sit back and we're like, what should we like? What's happening? What's happening? And I think that actually this is a great time for us to instead be a little bit more on that proactive side and say, what do we actually want to do as an industry? So I'm hoping that we can go more in that direction of like, rather than like, all this stuff is happening, like change, to like, hey, what do we like doing? What do we want to do? And how do we want to represent our role in the future?
Hmm. And I want to get to that in a second. Before we jump into
Yeah.
the IC, the super IC, which is something you've
Yeah.
been writing about, and I want to talk about skill development. Let's linger for a second on the consumers of research, the requesters of research. Are companies thinking differently about research? When they come to you with, like, I need research, for the listeners, I'm using air quotes, does that typically have, like, are they typically thinking interviews with customers? Are they trying to make a product better? I know I'm asking a very fundamental question, but to your point about tumult and things changing and all sorts of AI adjacent research or research activities, what do the companies that you hear from or work with, what do they think research is for? What is it supposed to do? From, again, I understand that you're working with a kind of sample set, but what do you hear?
Yeah. So people tend to come to me less with discovery now and more with, oh no, we're behind on something. Or like, oh no, I'm not hitting my numbers. Or, oh no, my
Ah,
boss is pissed. I need to fix this. This is how I think I can fix this. Please tell me that this is the right way to fix it.
okay.
So we've always had this, like, for the listeners, air quotes, problem or issue of, validating things rather
Mm-hmm.
than evaluating, or rather than understanding and discovering. That's always been something that's annoyed us as researchers, I think. And so it's not a new thing, but I think that it's even more prevalent now because people are super stressed. So we're kind of trying to accelerate past anything that feels inefficient. And a lot of things that feel inefficient are understanding the problem, taking a
Mm-hmm.
second and thinking about things,
Sure.
exploring a few different options before we go with like this one idea.
Yeah, yeah. And how do
So
you,
yeah.
well, what are your, because one of the other things I can expect, that it's like first mover advantage on the times the scale of large language models and this FOMO. So many executives are feeling FOMO. They're not even quite sure how artificial whatever, intelligence, deep learning, deep mind, they're not even sure how it might, could, should help their experience, but they know they want to do it. So what, you have limited time with these folks. What's like the first thing that you do? I love your approach to stakeholders, both managing them, educating them, and getting them involved. So when you start in one of these engagements and there's like this urgency and maybe there's some, like, we're already behind, Nikki, save us. What's like the first thing that you do?
I'm so annoying because I'm like, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we doing all of this? So I actually create a forcing function of slowing down for a second, because I tell them, if we move forward with this new AI feature that is super ambiguous and doesn't seem to actually have a place, like square peg, round hole, we're just trying to be AI first or focused or whatever the buzzword is, because, CEO needs us to be
Sure.
or wants us to be. I say, what are we actually doing here? And there are a lot of different ways that you can do that. I am fortunate because, generally speaking, when you get brought in as a consultant, it's a lot different than when you're sat in house and everybody's like, cool, we're not going to
Mm-hmm.
listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, which I've been through quite a lot. So whenever I've been in that more like in-house, or people are like, we don't want to slow down, I always say, like, okay, what's the smallest thing that we can do to move forward in this given moment that we can actually try and test, right? If you're going to go ahead with, our new AI pen that writes for you, I don't know why.
Love
Which
that.
actually might be like an actual use for AI. No, because it's so sad because nobody knows. Kids don't know how to write anymore. They know how to type.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
So, before we move forward, or if you're going to just move forward with that, can we at least test the ink color? Right. What is like a small thing that we can test that we can because I've already been accepted that we're going to have to change things later. And I tell you, we're going to just have to change things after the fact because we're going to find things that are wrong. So either we do it before or we do it after.
Yeah.
You choose.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Choose your own adventure.
This is something you've been writing about and that I've been in a lesser way writing about, but that is that research is in service of the decision. And so it sounds like there you can say, you're going to need to, you've already made a bucket of decisions about I like this, let's go with this, the AI pen. It's going to be this shape. It's going to interact with a digital ecosystem in this way. It's going to write in this particular color. I wanted, I hear de-risk so much. Let's de-risk this decision. I often hear and see you talking about it in terms of confidence. Let's give you a more confident decision. Is that also something that both in-house and consultants can do in those moments where they're sort of feeling urgency and a lack of openness from stakeholders to do some testing and learning?
Yeah, if you can get your hands on any sort of numbers or previous, I always feel bad doing this of I told you so. Or let's bring up something that went really poorly because we didn't test it. But if you can get your hands on that kind of information and those kinds of numbers and utilize that as almost a predictor of what might happen if you don't test something, then go for it and do that. So risk, let's say this AI pen, we pour a lot of money into developing something like this, right? So what is the risk? There is a risk in acquisition. So not being able to actually acquire anybody who wants to use this. There's a risk in retention because printers, nobody uses printers anymore because who wants to buy ink? It's not like you can't retain a printer very easily. And also they don't really print, I'm pretty sure. How do we retain those customers? When do people fall off? What's the possibility of churn? You can take all of those numbers and try and say if we fail at this, the possibility is that we don't acquire anybody or we acquire a small amount of people. We've spent 100,000 on this and we're only getting 5,000 in revenue. That's not great.
No.
So if we can try and find any sort of data or numbers or any time that we've not tested something properly and seen how it goes and demonstrate that, you are more likely to get people to listen to you. Now, are they going to change their entire plan? Probably not. But you might be able to say, hey, I know you're stressed. Let's do this in the fastest way possible that I can present to you in the smallest way to de-risk the thing that is the scariest for us right now. What is the scariest part of this AI pen?
Yeah. Yeah. It'll write on children's faces. And then children will not even know how to write because they won't want to write because they'll be so afraid.
And they won't know how to read because it's on their face.
I think we've identified an opportunity that few folks should invest in. Okay, so I like that idea of turning the urgency not against, but using that urgency to create awareness for research. Is that still the misconception that folks have about what research is supposed to do? Is that it's still the great validator? It's supposed to give me whatever stakeholder or middle sort of manager, the single piece of evidence that I need to take it to the boss to get that person's approval. Is that still, because again, it's I want to talk with you about democratization and where that is and how that's showing up. But those conversations when you and I were talking 3-4 years ago about wow, everybody wants to do research. There's so much research need. Has that that need and that interest created other kinds of blind spots? Are the blind spots still there? They're just faster. What do you think?
So I think it's still that misconception of that validation, which I have been through the years. I can understand a little bit more because everybody is so stressed, right? Everybody's getting immense amounts of pressure to have done their to-do list for next week
Mm,
yesterday, right? And so, of course, when we have this product that could go forward, um, it's kind of like either tell us that it's right, not that it's not right, tell us that it's right,
yeah.
or don't do anything at all.
Oh, geez.
And, and it's not in every circumstance.
Of
And
course,
that's
of course.
something that we've like dealt with for quite some time. But the reasons behind that, I think, probably are a little bit less now under like a misconception because people are starting to, I think, understand research a bit more and more due to just huge amounts of stress.
Yeah, yeah. So they know, they're recognizing I'm saying no to a thing that would help us. I'm doing that because we've got whatever, 5 fewer weeks than we thought, or the dev team is already up on their points for this quarter and we need to ship the thing. Yeah, that's so challenging. So let's then move to, if that's a bit of what's happening on the sort of consumers and stakeholders, let's shift to the IC. You mentioned that because budgets are thinned and thinning, I want to focus for a second on the super IC. And I think that's a way you're talking about, and you alluded to it earlier, the need for mixed methodological expertise or experience so that you can deploy a bunch of methods. I want to check back in with you because you've written widely about being a team of one or a smaller team. Are there new skills that you're encouraging? You mentioned facilitation. Are there traditional skills that you are both yourself or coaching others to really get sharper on? Take us into the toolbox or the tool shed of today's researcher. What do we need to be doing to stay relevant, to be able to react appropriately, and to get those quick wins when we can?
Yeah. So I think that what I am seeing is we don't have time for X, Y, and Z. So as a researcher, being able to come up with more efficient ways of approaching research. So that's why I, cite mixed methods because surveys are very helpful. So for instance, like if a team is sat there saying, what do we do next? What you could do is you could hold a whole question gathering workshop, which I'm not saying don't do, but you could have held this whole workshop, brought everybody together, gotten all the questions, done some dot voting, done rounds of discovery, then gone into some usability tests. Like it used to kind of be like that. Now I would say, still do like kind of that question gathering workshop to understand, where people's like question marks are or what they think that they should work on. So what are the insights that have come up where they're like, we're not sure how to prioritize these, and run an opportunity gap survey. So we've gone from this whole lengthy process to something that's much faster. And I would say like something that we should and need to do as researchers a little bit better generally, and I'm very, very guilty of this, is reusing relevant research. So
Hmm,
old research, like sometimes we just pile, 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 pile.
sure,
And it's like that teams not only get pissed about that, participants get pissed about that,
sure.
budgets
Oh,
go out
yeah.
the window, right? So I think that reusing research whenever you can and going back into that or doing some sort of literature review and checking out what's out there. Because that's you can do that yourself relatively fast. You
Yes,
can
yes.
sit down and do a heuristic evaluation on a high fidelity prototype, right? You can also, do internal research. So if you're fortunate enough to work in a B2C space, you could do, I used to call it, oh God, it was like something like speed testing or something. It was like supposed to be like speed dating, but you have your like colleagues
Yeah, yeah.
sit and like play with a prototype that people who didn't make it play with a prototype. Ideally, people in other departments like I don't know, like marketing or customer support or, a little bit more agnostic and play with it and then give their feedback. And like you do that in 15-minute rounds, right? And like if you have several prototypes, people just move down like the table almost testing it. So I think like some of that is, I don't want to say maybe it's coming back because it like wasn't as popular anymore, but sadly some of the like longer form research, like I can't remember the last time I heard somebody running a diary study.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Which is so sad.
even if you use some great tools, which you and I both know about, it's still
Yeah.
time consuming. And if you don't have
Yeah.
access to those tools, and that's a budget you have to ask for. I do want to echo the sentiment that you're saying. I'm hearing from a lot of researchers in larger orgs where the available data that is just unanalyzed is there.
Yeah.
I want for our listeners to remember that being a researcher is not just about primary research, going out and finding new stuff. Being a researcher is also taking that skill set, analyzing, sifting, sorting, to secondary research or desk research as well. So, Nikki, what I'm hearing you say is, know your stakeholder. You know, and I've been talking about this for a while. Know your stakeholders, know your space. There might be something that customer support or the success team has come upon, which could certainly be evidence for you to run primary research, or might just give you a hint to inform a decision. And so, I know that it's not as glamorous or as fun, frankly, as interviewing a user or creating a survey or being out in the field, certainly. But AI, and we can talk about it in a second, is one way where it can help expedite or make more engaging the desk research. But I do really want to underline that as a thing that, not that researchers are not doing it, but there's this like, we get excited about that thing of collecting new data, of going out into the field. And I think it's also really, really valuable to know what has been done. What did we miss? There's so many great future directions or limitation sections in previous research. How might that help you to tackle the thing now?
Yeah. And I would also like say that as a researcher, sometimes you might not have the ability to go out and talk to people. Like sometimes like people literally gatekeep you and a lot of people get really frustrated.
Sure.
But like, and I have been in that situation before. And what I have done is I've actually turned in towards the organization and turned more internally. And I was like, what do we have? And how do I make these processes more efficient of what we do have? And then how do I turn that, what I did quite a few times to get buy-in to actually speak to users was going through, this was like 10 years ago before AI really was even a blip, if anything, as I would go to, customer support, look through all the tickets, look through any reviews, look through any emails that came through with our account managers, sit in on some sales calls, gather all of this information, find a theme that felt really important. And then I would say, okay, team, let's do a design sprint. And we actually did design sprints. I feel like are kind of coming back a little bit.
I hope so.
Because they're like
Jeez.
efficient.
Yeah.
Right. And so we did like a few of these design sprints that were based off of secondary research that ended up in improving the product. And then they were like, oh, you actually can do interesting stuff with research. And so I would echo the sentiment of, just like we tell our stakeholders, you don't have to chase every new feature, go and improve the old. I would also say as researchers, we should go and not chase every new project or study or interview, but how can we improve what we already have, or even improve the processes within an organization of getting and disseminating that information.
I'm happily surprised that you, before we started recording, said that you're doing a lot more facilitation. Given the importance of efficiency, I find that a little surprising, because I would expect, this is my assumption here, that when stakeholders need fast research, they're likely looking for numbers. Give me the numbers that will help me prove this. But I guess, so let's take a step back. Unstructured, open-ended, quali kinds of data, closed-ended, county, quantitative data. I expect that there's a way for us researchers to be efficient in deploying both. How do you manage that tension between, and I'm not saying, I never want to give the impression that surveys are easy. Nikki and I have talked at great length about how difficult they are, and how the assumption that they're easy makes them often worse. Because if you ask like a product manager, hey, can you do this interview next week? They're not going to be, I think, as readily eager if you say, hey, can you program a survey? They'll be like, sure, here are the questions. And they'll anyway. So take us through the efficiency that you think about with being a mixed methods researcher. How can we be more efficient with qual? How can we be more efficient with quant?
So when it comes to marrying this qual and quant together, what I find is really great is when you have both, you can kind of do fewer of each side, which makes it more efficient. Or when you're pulling in, like, let's say that, so I had a client and we could not, they were very, very small B2B client. We could not for the life of us get 10 people to talk to us.
Wow. Okay.
10. And I was like, I wanted 15, then I wanted 12. Then I was like, I'm never going to speak to anybody about this. This is just, and I was watching the days go by. And as a consultant, when you're like, here's like a project end date, and you're like, oh no, this sucks. So what I ended up doing was I said, okay, let's speak with 10 people. And in addition to that, we sent a survey, and all of these things were happening in parallel. And then in addition to that, I went through customer support and pulled all the tickets that were relevant to that information. So one of the great things about mixed methods research is you have 2 or 3 different kinds of like research design. And I'm going to talk about the one, is it parallel convergent design or something?
Yes. Look at you. It's like you're a professional, Nikki. It's like you do this for a living.
Yeah, it's like I might have been in this field for over a decade, maybe. That's the only buzzword that's stuck.
I love it. I haven't heard like experimental or project design to that level in a minute. So that feels good to hear.
Yeah, we're coming back.
We are. That's right. Textbooks, handwriting, Nikki and Ben, blue book testing. Yeah, love it.
Don't even. So parallel convergent design is when things are happening all at the same time, right? So while you are recruiting and interviewing your users, you're sending out a survey, and you're going through and pulling customer support tickets. So mixed methods research is great because you can layer a lot of things. Of course, it's like not as ideal if you're using the interviews to inform your survey or your survey to inform your interviews, but there's still some overlap that you can do where you don't need to wait for like all of your survey data to come in before you start recruiting people. And that way, what tends to happen is if you're overlapping or in parallel, you can start to give stakeholders information faster. So the whole disappearing act, right? See you in 8 weeks for our like 1.5 hour presentation where everybody's stabbing themselves in the eye because all of you spent 30 minutes explaining your methodology and nobody really cares, except for Bob, who's like, I only spoke to 5 people,
Can you advance to the appendix? I want to see some of these demographics.
Yeah. Can you advance to us hanging up and no longer talking? But it's like, so what you can do instead is give people bite-sized information along the way. Now, I'm not telling you to be like, after 3 people have responded to your survey, say, I found the trend, like with rigor and caution, but it's like we are seeing direction. And like when you start to see direction, you can start to make movement. So you could even, this is something that I've done recently with clients because I'm testing out more of this facilitation stuff, is I've done mixed methods research where we're pretty parallel on a survey and interviews. And because the survey data is coming in faster, we're actually identifying things that I don't actually need to talk about in the interview. And we squeezed in an ideation session in between all of these things. So then like everybody's like, wow, we're doing stuff.
Yeah.
And so like it's great because like that's what people ultimately want. They want action and decision making. So if you can do that alongside the entire cycle, no matter like where you are, and kind of layer these things together so that you're kind of always like pushing through action, people are going to be thrilled.
Yeah. And they're seeing you deploy project management skills. They're seeing you leverage existing, like you as a researcher and as a professional, or in Nikki's case, as the owner of a business, someone who's been hired to go in, you're demonstrating so much expertise in those moments. And I think even though research is not where it was, even when you and I were talking 5 years ago about it, there's still, I think, great need for us to demonstrate the fact that we're not simply validators, rubber stampers. We have a craft. And so I think what you're describing there, Nikki, also reminds me of just the moments to take for craft. Let's talk for a second, or maybe many seconds. Facilitation. You're hanging out again. We're back together. What's happening? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And this can be just you saying, I like it. Walk us through why facilitation is something that you're reaching for more in your research toolkit.
Yeah. So I was like deemed a facilitator since like age 5. Like I was the one where people would be like, we need help coming up with something. And I'd be like, here I am.
Here we go.
Let's brainstorm.
Giant
And I was
post-it board,
yeah,
big marker.
literally.
Yeah.
I had like I had a little notebook, like a little like drawing notebook like this that I used to take with me everywhere, and with different colored pens. And I used to like be like, okay, it's meeting time. What's our agenda? Like I'm,
dinners for the week would be planned. School outfits.
And then I sit there and I'm like, why didn't I have many friends in high school? Maybe that.
I bet you were a wonderful yearbook or newspaper if you were on either of those committees.
I did both.
There we go. Yeah. Well, same. That's why you and I get along so well.
So I love facilitation, generally speaking. It's like a space that I feel like very comfy in. And I really, really like helping people come to their own conclusions rather than me trying to give them the solution. And I think that that's where facilitation is absolutely beautiful. Also, like people hate meetings. I read a statistic, 61% of people would rather go to the dentist than join a work meeting.
Wow. Wowie.
Yeah. 61%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nearly 2/3. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fun fact. And so people hate meetings so much. And what I love to do is give that back to them, like take the burden, take the relief off. So by facilitating any sort of really like anything from your bog standard, like here's our regular like retrospective, or just like a regular meeting, or like we need to come up with a strategy. We need to go from like an idea to a solution, or, literally any kind of meeting. Like as a facilitator, what you're doing is you're taking the burden off that team to actually focus on what they care about. Like, you have meeting tax. Meetings are just, what you have to do so that you can then go back and do the work that you actually want to do, or that actually needs to get done.
Yeah.
And so I think that I love that feeling of being able to like give that relief to people. And like, it's just so rewarding to see people like who normally might be like, ugh, like finally like open up and actually like have a great discussion where there is a goal, a start, and a finish with a decision and outcome. And I think that for us as researchers, like I've facilitated things my entire career. Like I was just always brought in as that facilitator. And then because I love it, I was like, yeah, I can help you.
Sure.
And so, but I that's what helped me understand that user researchers should be doing this with their research. Like we can't just like throw a presentation into the void and hope for the best. Like it's actually beneficial for us to sit down with our teams and say, even instead of a presentation, here are like the 5 themes that I found. Let's do some let's vote on them. Let's do some how might we statements. Let's do some crazy eights. We have prototypes to test. How much more beneficial is that than, because like all you're doing when you're like, hey, product manager Joe, research indicates that, Joe's asleep,
right.
Like Joe's out to lunch, wishing he was sipping a beer somewhere else.
Sure.
And like nothing has changed from the beginning of your presentation to the end of the presentation. So instead, maybe you can have a presentation and then a mini ideation session. Maybe you just turn all your presentations into ideation sessions. Like it's just like, it's something that moves things forward. And I think researchers are like, how do I get more involved in decision-making strategy? That's it.
Mm-hmm. So what are some questions that folks, because I recognize that facilitation is a means to a bunch of different ends. And so asking you like, how do we facilitate good is a very big one. Is there something though that when you go into, or before you start or begin a facilitation, that questions you ask yourself, or things that you might recommend others who would love to do what you just described, things that they should be thinking about doing, facts they should be gathering before they get in and schedule folks' time?
Yes. Goal. What is the goal? what is the point? That should be your question when you open up your calendar to put a meeting in somebody else's calendar. And this is great practice for like, because like facilitation can be quite scary when you're sat in front of like 15 of your colleagues trying to like wrangle cats, and like, it's essentially like, what is the goal? Because if you don't know what the point of what you're doing there is, you're not going to be able to create any sort of structure around it, and you're not going to be able to come to an outcome. So ask yourself, what's the goal, and practice that by like every single time you put a meeting into somebody's calendar, write down in the agenda, or for yourself, who cares, whatever, what is the goal and what is like the expected outcome from that? Like, what is the end state? What has happened? Like, think ahead. What has happened by the end of that meeting to make it a success? So if you have then why you're there, what the end is, then it's a lot easier to say, okay, we're planning an offsite. Let's say we're planning an offsite, and maybe that's not the best example, but hey, we're there. We're gonna then, like, the goal of that is then to have a decision about where the offsite should be, right?
Sure.
So then when we come into the meeting, we can collect those ideas. And when we go to, when Sally brings up the fact that, George, is, I don't know, doesn't want to go on an offsite, like, we can say, okay, let's park that and let's talk to George later. Or like, if it gets completely derailed because, the one person who's on paternity leave and we don't know when he's going on paternity leave isn't in the meeting, and blah, 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 blah.
Or someone wants tank tops, no more t-shirts, tank tops only.
Yeah.
Like, well, we're not there yet.
Yeah. And then somebody's like, oh, did you see the all hands? And you're like, okay, and then suddenly we have 5 minutes to decide where our offsite is going to be, right? So like, if you don't know what the exact point is and what the end state is, it's going to be chaos in between. And like, meetings are chaos. You also have to accept that people are going to be like, ugh. And I always say parking lot. So you have a little parking lot of issues that came up that aren't relevant to the topic. You put those in the parking lot and you say, hey, person, I hear you right now. Your laptop's not working and you're concerned that everybody's laptop isn't going to work at the offsite. We're going to bring that offline and talk about it later because we need to determine if we're going to Spain or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I hear in that is something you write about a lot, which is the need for researchers to be better about control. Like the 67-page deck, you might have a lot of really good nuggets in there.
About 67 pages worth.
Probably, yeah. And again, I get it. Like, we want to have control over when and how our participants or customers are talked to. We want to make sure that it's ethical and that we're not bothering folks. Yes, those all are important. Not but. And I think what I hear in this is, for facilitation, it's much more dialectic. You need to be willing to create a structure where folks feel present and safe and that they can share things, ask questions, and also that the researcher will let them do so. I know so many of those share outs, not so many, but I have been in share outs where it's really just one way. It's really, again, smart things presented beautifully, like clips and highlight reels and screen shares and all this great stuff. And there's all this bottling of questions that product manager so-and-so has or designer so-and-so has. And then by the end, they're so fatigued that they might have forgotten their question, or the thing I also like about facilitation is that it creates the two-way street. It makes you prioritize as a researcher. You have to ask, what am I unwilling to, or what am I willing to let go of? What am I unwilling to let go of? I'm not saying let go of everything. Have a plan, have a structure. Like, to your point, Nikki, like, what do we want to leave and, hit end on this meeting having done? And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not an easy thing. So if this is something that you are interested in, try it in like those safe spaces of like one-on-one meetings where you might feel more comfortable with the person, and try and be like, hey, actually, I put together like this kind of like framework for us to work through our one-on-ones from here on out. Like, can we try it out? And, try and experiment on different things in like those settings, rather than going into like, a room of like 15 product managers and devs and saying, I have this workshop that I think might go well. And then everybody's like, we're going to leave.
Yeah. Or I have to mute my screen while I eat, AKA tune into
Yeah.
making code
I'm
or whatever
somewhere
it is.
else.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I'm watching Love is Blind.
We know what Nikki does on some of the pre-meetings that we have. We don't actually do that. Nikki and I just show up and we do it. It's just magic. Actually, this is why you're such a great podcast guest and why you have been a wonderful collaborator through the years, is that you know how to use or leverage people's time in the best way. I've always appreciated that about you. And so with an eye to the clock, I do want to make sure we have time to talk about artificial intelligence, large language models, the technology of the world. I don't know where you want to go. I don't know where you want to start. I mean, certainly since for those listening,
Can people
Nikki
see us?
They can, yes.
Okay.
They can see you. They can see you elevatoring down. So if you're listening to this, open up YouTube and go to this exact moment in the in the screen or in the show. Okay. I don't even know what I want to ask you about AI. There have been so many interesting, useful things written and said about it. I guess I'll start with, how are you, if at all, using artificial intelligence in your research work or your consulting work or your coaching practice or any of the various activities that you partake in, that you do? How are you using it?
So I haven't opened up ChatGPT for 2 weeks now, and it's been really nice.
Okay.
So ways that I've used it and probably will continue to use it here and there, especially when it comes to like my research practice, is things like, tell me what I'm missing. Tell me like the perspectives that I'm missing on this research plan. Tell me what participants I might be missing, reaching out to that would make the participant pool more diverse, or like, what am I missing when it comes to like accessibility here, or, thinking through like that, because that's not my strong suit very naturally. Like I grew up like in a time where it wasn't as like thought about. So I didn't like, it's not immediate for me. So I use it more of a like, what am I missing? What perspectives could I, just not be like attuned to? Or like, I'm like trying to role play a little bit of like, okay, if you are a CEO who hates research and I pitch this research plan to you, what are all the holes that you might poke at it? What are some questions that might come up?
Sure.
So I use it more in like that way. I have created agents to help me with things like, let's say, research planning, but all of my agents are trained on all of my past material, and the web search is turned off. Yeah. So like it won't it will still manage to hallucinate slightly, like because like it's not AI if it's not putting out some weird stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
But I've trained it to be like, okay, like this is a brief that I've gotten from a client. If we were to just go and do like a first draft research plan, what might that look like? And like, I will then give my thoughts on what that research plan kind of like some goals, some overall like statements, objectives, and some like ideas that I have. And it will then spit it out into like my research plan template, because I have fed it 25 research plans that I've done in the past.
Got it. And it knows that structure. Okay.
Yeah. And like I've fed it articles that I've written on research plans, because I trust those articles because I wrote them. So my, like the way that I try and use AI, but like still like I end up doing a lot of work to the point where like sometimes I'm like, I just don't want to bother with this. I can just do it myself.
Sure.
Like probably a little bit faster, but I will say, I will give it credit sometimes for being good at maybe showing me things that I've missed, showing me things that, perspectives that I could be stronger on. Or like if I'm really struggling because I have no information about the team, I can say, hey, how could this research project, kind of tie into really important metrics like the pirate metrics, the acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and one more R that I can never remember. Loyalty.
Sure, that's the last R.
But that doesn't fit. So how can it like fit into those? Because a lot of people, like if you don't know your team or organizational goals, or nobody's giving them to you, the chances are they're in the pirate metrics, because those are the most important ones. So I will say, like, how does this kind of like fit into that.
Yeah.
And it might help me with brainstorming some
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah. How about things that you, word of the day, are verboten for Nikki, i.e. things you just will not accept AI doing? I mean, we've been talking about facilitation. I'm thinking about some very snappy tools that are supporting not facilitation, but moderation, wherein, you pull up your interview guide or something, and then you give it to an LLM who then talks to, I'm using air quotes, but are there, where
AI
is the
moderated
bridge too
interviews.
far? Yeah, where's the bridge too far for Nikki in AI vis-a-vis research?
Well, synthesis, to be honest, it's just
Different than analysis, folks. Note Nikki's phrasing. Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. It's just garbage. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just honestly, like, it's never going to be nuanced. Like, you're sitting there trying to tell a robot whose literal job it is to say, this word makes most sense after this previous word that I've just generated to give you something nuanced and human.
Yeah.
It's just not like, I'm so sorry. It's just not super ideal for that.
Yeah.
Keep trying. Let me know. Maybe I've missed the boat on something, but like, I know that like the synthesis that I have created is eons better than the stuff that like something is just kind of spitting out. So
because you've done all that work we talked about earlier, where you know the company or the team or the stakeholder and their preferences, and you can spend multiple hours plugging that in, or you can just take the maybe analysis or your own analysis and you can do that synthesis wherein you remember, hey, I'm talking to humans about other humans about human experiences of things we're making. Let me take a role there. Okay. Yeah. Are there then skills that you would like recommend folks when you're doing your coaching and your own sessions? Are there things because I expect you have clients who ask, hey, do I need to get, how do I demonstrate that I'm AI savvy? There was a conversation actually yesterday going on in one of the webinars about like, how do I demonstrate that I know quote unquote AI or that I've used AI? How are you advising some of your own coaching clients to think about and use AI and then to showcase those skills if they're interviewing or looking for new work?
Yeah, so it's getting ahead of like stakeholder objections and questions, which is that whole like perspective, like brainstorming, like using AI to be like, what are the like objections that I'm going to get? What are the questions that I'm going to get? Like, be careful, of course, with what you upload, but you could say like, here's like this report, here's the first draft of my report and I'm reporting to X, Y, and Z. They are give context, of course, and then say, how, what objections will they have or what problems will they have or what have I missed that might be important to them. Like, I think that demonstrating that because like what you're doing is essentially like getting ahead of things. And I guess that like, if you have an AI that's like super private and you feel comfortable with like creating agents, I think that would be a nice demonstration as well. So let's say that you create like really basic things though, that you would give to an intern to do with like, and like make sure that your agents have like reputable like documents and sources to pull from. So like GPT agents, like you upload literal documents. And I would personally recommend like turning the web search off of that, so that like it's only pulling from its own stuff rather than like going out into the wild. And I think that's a great way to demonstrate it because like say you have one for like research planning or scoping, say you have one for recruitment, which is obviously the worst part of everything. So recruiting and screening, to like make that snappier. Let's say that you have one, let's say that you actually train an agent that helps turn crappy stakeholder questions into good interview questions. Like if you can demonstrate, because like as a researcher, I know what good looks like. So when AI spits out absolute garbage, I could say, that's garbage. That's no good. However, thumbs down. But I'm an expert in this. Other people are not. Just like when I went on Lovable and I was like, let's vibe code. And then like, it was like, you have 97 issues. And I'm like, fix it. And my code is probably disgusting. Right. But I don't know. Right. It's fixing it. It's doing the thing I asked, right? It's horrible, but it's doing it.
Yeah.
So it's that same thing. So could you also demonstrate that you're trying to help make the whole thing efficient for the entire team by like, and this kind of gets into like using AI to democratize a little bit, setting these agents. Like I set for one of my clients, I set up a TED W agent. So
Nice.
like my question framework, I set them that TED-W agent so that like any questions that they put in to that agent that are interview questions automatically get generated into TED-W based, so more open-ended discovery questions with follow-ups. Right. So like you don't only have to demonstrate that like you're using AI for like your process, of course, wherever it could speed it up, where it's like it doesn't matter if this thing's dumb or not, go for it. But like you could also help empower others on your team as well.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I will drop the video where your boy has a fresh quadruple zero fade. And Nikki, the more important thing is Nikki, not me, but Nikki goes through the TED-W framework.
So
it's
fun.
awesome. If you haven't used it, you should use it today. And I will, hopefully, as you're listening to this, you will click that link. It's awesome. It's portable. It uses, it's great for just about any industry. Okay, Nikki, with our remaining time, tell us some of the things you're working on, where folks can find you, how can folks learn more and get more of this great insight from you?
Yeah, I scream on LinkedIn quite frequently. And hope
there's
there's
a good CTA. Are you looking to be screamed at about research and insights? And if you are,
follow me on LinkedIn.
And you're Nikki Anderson -UX.
UX,
Anderson with an O, yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. I don't even know that. So thanks.
I have it pulled up as your part-time agent. I want to make sure that we get this. Yeah. Okay.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. So you can follow me there. I talk a lot about UX research and just facilitation. You'll start seeing a little bit more there. I also have a newsletter, userresearchstrategist.com. You can find me there where I scream more gently in a longer form. If that's your jam. I also have like a podcast on there and like videos, behind the scenes videos and all that jazz. And you can join that, or you can hop over to dropinresearch.com and hire me as a facilitator. So if you're hating your meetings, I will come in and I will fix that problem of, that meeting should have been an email.
With less screaming or same amount of screaming? I guess it depends on the need.
I'm a gentle facilitator.
Okay, good.
I'm a very angry LinkedIn writer, but a very gentle facilitator. You can also buy my book.
Yes,
Impact.
Yes, Impact.
Yeah.
It's over Nikki's left shoulder for those watching. Yes, Impact. We'll drop the links for all these. Nikki, I need to give you back your day because I want to ask you about all the manner of things, football on Jersey, cats and dogs, writing. Nikki has a new book that she's in working through, so another one.
Yes.
I will be getting to work because whenever I'm done talking to you, I'm reminded of how I should be spending my time not scrolling the various social medias. Always good to see you, my friend. Nikki Anderson does it all. User research strategist, drop in research, find her, learn from her, even if it is a scream. Good to see you as always, my friend.
Good to see you.